Welcome to the last video in this section, where we will now finish up the application that we have been building. So in the last lecture, we already made all our elements here controlled elements. And so now all we have to do is to listen for the submit event here on this form and then handle it accordingly. So that's easy enough. It's always in the same way. So on submit, then typically we write a handle submit function right here. So function handle submit, which will receive the event. And then, as always, we need to do prevent default. All right, and let's start by adding some guard clauses here. So basically preventing this form from being submitted if there is no bill or if there is no value paid by the user. So in this case, just return and do nothing. Okay, but if there is a bill or a value paid for the user, well then now it's time to actually split the bill. Now in practice, that means basically that the balance of the user in question will be updated. So of the friend here in question, I mean. So whenever we split a bill, it means that this value right here will be updated, right? So something is clearly happening on the screen. However, does that mean that we now need a new piece of state? Well, actually no, because we already have these friends here in our state, and all we're doing is to update them, right? So basically all we will do is to update this balance value that is displayed here. So let's come again to the component where that state is living. So this state right here, and then let's write yet another handler function. So function handle split bill. And this one will simply receive a value. So in this case, there is no need to pass in the entire friend because we already know which friend is going to be updated. And so that's exactly the current friend, right? But for now, let's actually just log this value here to the console. So we will take care of this more complex updating logic at the end. So for now, let's just pass this handle function here into the component. So right into this component here. So on split bill will be handled by handle split bill. Okay. Then let's come down here again and let's then receive on split bill. And then finally, we can use that here in order to update the state. Well, for now, we will only log something to the console, but we will take care of updating in a minute. For now, we first need to figure out exactly with which value we will update the friends balance. And this is actually the most confusing part of this whole application, even more confusing than all the React stuff itself. So remember that the bill can basically be paid either by you, so the user, or by the friend. And so based on that, we now need to set a value. So we will use the ternary operator here for that. And so we say who is paying is equal to the user, which is basically you. So remember that negative numbers in the balance are owned by you, so by the user. And positive numbers means that your friend is owing you. Therefore, if this here is the situation, so if you are paying, then they will be owing you their part. And so therefore, this is a positive number. So the value here will be paid by friend. And in the opposite case, so if your friend is paying, then you will actually own your part. So the paid by user part. And it's going to be a negative value. Again, because the negative values are the ones owned by you. So minus paid by user. And so then inside this function here later, we will add that value that we just returned here onto the balance. So once we're done with all that, I promise this will be a lot easier to understand. But anyway, let's now come here to our console. Let's just quickly reload here, and then let's just try any of these. So let's say the bill is 200 euros, and your part is 50, and Sarah's part is 150, and you are paying the bill. And so the result is then a positive 150, which will be added on top of the balance. So it's plus 150 because it's your friend who is owing you. And so, yeah, those are the positive numbers. If we change this here to Sarah, then it will become minus 50. So that is your part, which you are then owing to your friend. And so then it becomes minus and your part. So minus 50. All right. So our function here is now receiving that value. And so now let's update our friends state. So set friends. And once again, the new array that we will return here will be based on the current friends array. And so here we need that callback. And then what we're going to do is friends.map, because we want to return a new array with the exact same length as the current one. So that's how we always do it when we update an object in an array. So we have done that many, many times before. And so if the code I'm going to write next is a bit strange to you, then just feel free to go back to one of those lectures. But anyway, let's now loop actually over this array in which each of the objects is of course a friend. And so let's then update the friend whenever the current friend.id is equal to the selected friend.id. And so here's what I mentioned earlier, which is that we already know which of the friends is getting updated, right? Because we already hold that in the state. So if this is the case, so if the current friend is the one that we want to update, then, well, here we are going to return an object which will contain all the elements, so all the properties of the current friend, but we want to override the balance property. And we will override it with friend.balance, so the current value plus the value that we received. And that's it. So I just saved here by accident, and so immediately we get an error because we're missing the second part of the ternary operator. So here in the second branch of the ternary operator, in case that the current friend is not the one that we want to update, we simply return that friend unchanged. And with this, we should now have a working application. So let's again use the values that we already know, so that we used before. And let's actually still log the value here to the console, just so we can better understand what is happening here. All right. So remember that before Sarah was owing us 20 euros. And so now see what happens. Now she owes us 170. So that's the 150 that we got now on top of the 20 euros that she was already owing us before. And again, that's because I am paying the entire bill here. So it's like I'm lending her. So I'm paying her 150 euros, which is her expense. So her part of the bill. So if we had now a 100 euro bill where my expense is 90 and then she pays it, then she pays my 90 part of the bill. And so then this should become here 100 and, or actually it should become 80. So let's wait for it. And indeed, now it's 80. And the same logic can be applied here. We just need to now reset these values here. So let's say we have a bill of 20. And since Clark is owing me 7, or actually you owe Clark those 7 euros, let's now use that here. So here I'm using 13 so that Clark's expense is 0. And then if I pay, we should be even after this. And indeed, now we are even. Great. So this can be a bit confusing, but this is also not really what matters. What matters is all the knowledge, or at least all the practice that we just gained from building this amazing project. There's just one small thing missing, which is that here the state is not clearing. So we have two options now. It's to clear the state here in the form, but even better, and which is what I actually do here, is after this is done, so after the bill is split, it will automatically close the form again. And so that's very easy to do, right? Let's just get rid of this. And then here, thanks to the power of state, once again, we can just say set the selected friend to null. And that's going to be it. So once again, very, very easy to do with the power of state. Imagine doing this kind of stuff with vanilla JavaScript. You would probably become crazy at some point. So with this, it's super straightforward. Let's just reload here. Now let's use Anthony here. Let's say 150. Our part was like this, and it doesn't really matter. But as I click here, you see that the form disappeared, and this value here, of course, has changed. Great. And with this, our application is feature complete, and you just added one more small React app to your portfolio. So very, very well done. You're doing great progress here. Now, in order to become even better, as we finish this first part of the course, it's very, very important that you build a lot of similar and small projects just like this one. So it can be something like a shopping list, or a simple goal tracker, or something like a conference speaker list where users can select which talks they want to go to. So just some small app like this. It doesn't have to be super fancy or original, of course. All that matters is that you practice the skills by writing the code without following a tutorial. So without following anyone writing the code for you. So I really advise you to not move on to part 2 before having built something small completely on your own. And then, once you are done with that, no matter how long that takes, I hope to see you very soon in that part 2 of this course.